What it do, Dream Team? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another Australian reaction video. Terror behind the Japanese line. Australia's Z Special Unit explained. I'm intrigued to hear about this special unit. I've never heard of an Australian Z Special Unit, but we're going to find out. And before we do, make sure you guys subscribe, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up. Let's dive right in.
The whole point of covert operations is that, well, they're covert. Unfortunately, this means that covert special forces operatives tend to miss out on the gratitude they might deserve. While the Second World War may have come to an end in 1945, the veterans of one particular Allied Special Forces unit swore never to speak of their heroic yet horrible exploits, bottling up their suffering till the waning years of their lives.
Oh, wow.
These men were the bane of the Japanese in the Southwest Pacific Theater, and they weren't opposed to working with literal headhunters to see their common enemy dead on the jungle floor. Wow. In this video, we shine some much needed light in the Australian-led special force known as Z Special Unit. It's no secret that many of the world's special operations organisations have modelled themselves after British Spec Ops, as was the case with the Australian Inter-Allied Services Department, or ISD, which, in typical Spec Ops fashion, underwent a series of administrative and acronymic changes to become the Services Reconnaissance Department, or SRD, in 1943.
Okay.
While it was still the ISD, a field unit was formed under its command, designed to carry out intelligence, special reconnaissance and sabotage operations, as well as guerrilla warfare against Imperial Japan in the Southwest Pacific. This was Z Special Unit. While primarily a Vegemite-fueled Australian force, Z Special Unit featured volunteers from New Zealand, Britain, the Netherlands and, while abroad, Indonesia too.
Oh, wow.
Most of their pre-deployment training, however, took place in Australia, most notably in Refuge Bay, Sydney, Z Experimental Station, Queensland, and Fraser Island, Queensland, yet also in Western Australia and the Northern Territory. And one of their trademark tools wasn't a gun, but a folding kayak, inside which many Z operatives would come to break their backs. While Z Special Unit took on 264 missions in 81 covert operations between June 1942 and the end of the war, its operations in Queensland, Singapore, New Guinea and Borneo are among its most famous, or more appropriately, infamous. Yes, you heard that right. Z Special Unit did indeed operate in Queensland, Australia, but they obviously didn't go around blowing up bridges or anything like that. In reality, in preparation for a raid on a Japanese-occupied port in New Guinea, Z Special Unit decided it would be a good idea to practice on Australian naval vessels in Townsville harbour. In the dead of night on the 22nd of June 1943, they paddled into the harbour on folding kayaks and stuck magnetic limpet mines to the hulls of 10 ships before fleeing. Some hours after the rooster crowed the following morning, the sailors in the harbour freaked out over the, unbeknownst to them, dummy mines. The mock operation was a success, but it led to the arrest and subsequent discharge of Lieutenant Samuel Warren Carey from Z Special Unit.
Wow.
The operation into New Guinea was also trashed, but for unrelated reasons. What the Z operations learned in Townsville, they put to good use in Singapore later that year. By 1943, the Japanese had a firm grip on Singapore, an island stronghold vital to Allied operations in the Pacific. While they held onto the island until the end of the war, the Allies didn't make it easy for them. On the 2nd of September, 15 Australian and British Z operatives left Western Australia in the MV Krait, a Japanese fishing boat renamed after a small but highly venomous snake. They dyed their hair and skin dark and dressed themselves in sarongs, meaning to pass as Indonesian fishermen, and arrived off Singapore just over 3 weeks later. Unfolding their kayaks, they paddled to a nearby island from which they set Singapore harbour in their sights. On the night of the 26th, they pulled another Townsville, yet this time with very real limpet mines.
Dang. So the first time was just kind of a practice mission to see if they could do it, and he did it to actual allies, and that man, I can't remember his name, that had him up there. They actually fired him from the Z Force for doing that. But Jesus, what he did showed them, I guess, it gave them a plan to use in the future as they did this against the Japanese later on. Which, dang, he shouldn't have been fired then. I understand it scared, you know what I'm saying, the people in his force, it scared allies, which it wasn't supposed to scare. It scared your own people. But I guess he was just seeing if it was something they could actually do, something they could actually pull off, which I'm not mad about. I guess he should have let the proper people know ahead of time. But hey, it was a strategy that ended up working and that they could use later on against Japan, and definitely did.
Townsville, yet this time with very real limpet mines. The resulting blasts damaged or sunk 4 Japanese ships. As Z veteran Douglas Herbst put it, they travelled thousands of miles in enemy-occupied territory, then got out of the boat and paddled canoes for 100 miles into Singapore. The Krait was a little 70-foot boat, and it sank more shipping than cruisers with 800 men on board.
But
the success of the Krait and her sneaky crew was not an indication of successes to come. A year later, Z operatives tried a similar stunt, this time using a Malayan sailing ship to get them closer and motorized submersible canoes nicknamed Sleeping Beauties to deliver their payloads. Nearing Singapore Harbour,
now that I think of, I'm so sorry for stopping it right there, but now that I think about it, because I just got done watching Fat Pizza, and where I guess they were trying to act as like fishermen on a boat, and saying they're from Australia, and like the Japanese like shot the boat down, and I was like, why would they shoot the boat down? Or was it? Yeah, and then I was like, why would they be? And it possibly could have something to do with this. Now that I'm seeing this, if that's the case, then I understand the show a little bit more. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting.
This time using a Malayan sailing ship to get them closer and motorized submersible canoes nicknamed Sleeping Beauties to deliver their payloads.
Oh, wow.
Nearing Singapore Harbour, a Japanese patrol boat stopped them, detecting their ploy and opening fire. The operatives scuttled their ship and escaped on kayaks. While some were able to put some distance between them and their attackers and ultimately resume their mission, potentially sinking 3 Japanese ships in Singapore Harbour, 13 Z Special Unit operatives were killed immediately or lost their lives soon after. A further 10 were captured and beheaded. And this wasn't like in Skyrim or whatever. Some of these beheadings took 2 or 3 blows to complete. Disaster struck in New Guinea in 1945 as well, yet the
Definitely RIP to all those who lost their life serving their country, fighting against the evil that was Imperial Japanese at the time. Definitely rest in peace to all those soldiers, and all those soldiers on top of that who didn't get any recognition for all the heroics that they did, for everything that they did for the country, and they had to keep it covert, they had to keep it secret, they couldn't talk about it. All the horrors that they faced, all the people that they lost, those soldiers, since they couldn't talk about it, I assume those soldiers were never got to be mourned, never got to be appreciated, never got to be praised like they should have been, and never got to be thanked like they should have been by the rest of the world. And so I just want to say thank you to those who lost their lives, and thank you to, as well as those who didn't, as well as those who just fought for the country and fought against Japan and did everything that they could. Thank you to you guys.
Disaster struck in New Guinea in 1945 as well, yet the Z operatives assigned to this mission showed their mettle no less. Under the veil of night on the 11th of April, 8 Z operatives disembarked the patrol boat and started the long paddle to the shore of Japanese-occupied Muschu Island. The currents were strong that night, however, and the operatives ran into a reef, losing some of their equipment to the waves. While they were unable to get their feet on solid ground, their gear had washed up on the shore, signaling their presence to the Japanese, who sent out 1,000 troops to hunt them down. Despite their training, there was little the Z operatives could do. All but one of them were slain. But
Wow.
one man did survive. Fighting off the Japanese all by himself, one sapper, Edgar Mick Dennis, a hardened Australian commando, managed to escape and get vital intel into Allied hands,
Wow.
contributing in no small part to the Allies' success in the Aitape-Wewak campaign. Dennis survived the war as well, going on to say, "They were hunting me, and every time they got close, I would knock the first few over and then go bush." And on his bravery, he said, "I don't think it's born in you. It's not drilled into you. It's just something that happens in the spur of the moment. You know what you're going to do and you do it." While Singapore and New Guinea were terrible, Zed's special unit operations in Borneo were a complete nightmare, even the successful ones. Between 1943 and 1945, Z operatives harried the Japanese troops who were occupying Borneo and inflicting unspeakable suffering on the island's people. As all good special forces should do, Zed's special unit made effective use of their environment, going as far to train and organize the indigenous natives to help them defeat their common enemy.
Wow.
One of such operations was Operation Argas, in which 44 Z Special Unit operatives gathered vital intel and trained indigenous natives for a guerrilla campaign against their Japanese occupiers between March and October 1945. The intel they obtained clued the Australian 9th Division into Japanese numbers and movements in North Borneo, ultimately allowing them to take and secure it. The local guerrillas also managed to slay around 100 Japanese troops.
Dang.
Among the Z operatives in Borneo was Aussie Jack Tredrea, known by his fellow operatives as Commando Jack.
So they went ahead and trained the natives in there because they were under Japanese rule too, I guess, and so to kind of train them to be able to use guerrilla warfare against Japan, against the Japanese. And I mean, I'm sure they were wanting to fight just as much because if they were under Japanese rule, they were being mistreated, and so they're ready to fight and get payback on Japan. That's crazy.
On his time in Borneo, where he was assigned to Operation Samut, Jack said, "We did our jump into Borneo 4 months before the invasion to organize the native population. We trained 2,000 of them, and when the invasion came, we had 32 operatives, each with their own guerrilla force." While Tredrea was quite active in the media in the waning years of his life, the story of Australian Sergeant Fred Sanderson isn't so widely known. After parachuting into Borneo in March 1945, he led some 500 headhunting natives against the Japanese, earning himself a Distinguished Conduct Medal and the headhunters under his charge more than 100 enemy heads. On his experience, Sanderson said, "I was always thinking what it was going to be like when I was hunted. I always thought the Japanese would get me one day." But all of these heroic exploits were swept under the rug, coming to light only decades after the end of the war. As Commando Jack put it, "When we were discharged out of Zed's Special Unit, the operatives had to sign a Secrets Act. It wasn't until 1980, at a national reunion in Melbourne, that we knew what the next guy did."
Wow.
So what do you think? Had you heard of Zed's Special Unit before this video? How hard do you think it would have been to stay quiet about the war for more than 30 years? Lastly, can you think of any other operations in which Z operatives participated in? Let us know in the comment section below, because we always love reading your guys' comments. And just before you go...
Yeah, I had never heard of the Z operation unit before. It sounds like an absolutely incredible unit, though. That had to be kept under wraps until, I believe you said, 1980. They didn't get the recognition that they actually deserved for risking their lives, for all the heroic things that they did. And so shout out to Australia's Z Special Unit. You guys are absolutely incredible. That's all we have for this video. If you enjoyed that reaction, make sure you take a look at this one. Also, make sure you subscribe. It's your boy Neal, out.